And welcome to this extra special sneak preview of Raw, the exciting new short story collection from best-selling novelist Cecelia Ahern. It's published in 2 days' time in the UK, and this will be the first time Cecilia's ever done a launch like this in front of a live studio audience. But I'm going to give you a little bit of an exclusive, although I'm not going to give you the detail or I'll get shouted at by the PR. I'm not going to say the details. Liz is giving me a look. Sorry, Liz over there is the publicist. Raw has been on sale for 2.5 days in Ireland. It's 2.5 days, and it's going to be announced tomorrow that will be straight into bestseller list. So congratulations, Cecelia.
Thank you. That's why I have this. No other reason.
No, not given speaking. I'm going to assume that nobody needs any introduction to Cecelia, so I've got all this spiel about your 25 million book sales.
No, you can tell them that.
You don't need to know about the awards or any of that. So I think what you really need to know about is Raw, because Raw is something I think really different and special from Cecelia. So it is really different and special.
Yeah.
Are you brooking it?
No, I mean I probably should be, but I'm so excited. I feel like I started writing them 5 years ago, and I've been talking about them for 5 years. So I'm finally everyone gets to read them, and I'm so proud of them, and I've had so much fun writing them, and they mean so much to me that I just feel so proud, and I feel like the energy as well from the whole team and from readers, and the feedback has been incredible. But I usually feel like this with books. I don't get fearful. I just think I've done the best that I can possibly do. I've got the most enjoyment out of it as possible. That I don't really have nerves about. Maybe I should.
No, but I think this will be a lovely surprise for your fans, because this is a bit annoying of me to say, but we were just talking out there about the fact that you think you know what you're going to get, in a good way, but this is different.
It is different,
but good different, not bad different.
Yeah, it's definitely. So I have a theory on this, which I've been saying for the last 5 years. That people who read my books, they are surprising because they are unique and different. I've never done a collection of 30 short stories before, and they're all surreal and quite whimsical and humorous. But people who've read me all the way from PS to Lyrebird, I think they won't be hugely surprising. I think they'll be more surprising for the people who may have read the first few books or haven't read me at all and think that I am a certain type of author.
Yeah.
Like, what's this romance writer? Writing these kinds of stories. So I think that people will be more surprised who've never read me before.
Because there's always been a little bit of magic realism.
Yes,
hasn't
yeah.
there?
Yeah, in definitely about 6 novels I've had that, or hints at it. Even with Lyrebird, which wasn't a kind of magical book, there was a hint at something otherworldly about the character. So that's normal. I think, and even with these stories, I had one which was called The Woman Who Lost Her Marbles, and I decided then to write that as The Marble Collector. So these 30 stories could be novels, but what makes them different is that they're kind of jam-packed together, which makes them punchier. The stories are a lot punchier.
So where did it, because you've been writing them for 5 years, so where did the germ come from? What made you want to, because they're fables, really, they're almost parables, and it feels like maybe by complete coincidence they've been published at a time when fairy tales are feeling really relevant and having a comeback. So how did you get from the 5 years ago sitting down and writing A Woman Whose Story to now?
So about 8 years ago, I was at a meeting in LA with a casting agent, and we were talking about why my stories appeal to them. And she was telling me, it's very depressing really, but obviously it was about demographics. They like my stories, but the characters mostly were in their 30s.
They're too female, too old.
Yeah, no, they were ideal. They liked that age, and they were saying, well, that helps their advertising and blah blah blah. And so it all became kind of money related and advertising led. And I said, well, what about the women over 55? And she said, oh no, we don't have a demographic, for women over 55.
We don't do that.
We don't do that.
No.
So it just struck me. I know that's the reality and that's the business, but not only do women feel like they're invisible as they get older, and you hear of actresses saying when you get to your 50s there's no roles. I was sitting in a meeting listening to it, and that's when started bubbling away in my head about the fact that not just women feel invisible, they actually are in a way. And so that's, well, the first thing I did after that was to write a screenplay called Old. All the characters were in their 70s and 80s, but of course nobody wanted to make that for reasons that I've just explained.
Advertising, yeah.
And then the first story that came from that was The Woman Who Slowly Disappeared, which is about a woman who, as she gets older, she starts to fade away. She starts to disappear because she feels like society doesn't see her, doesn't value her, that she's not relevant, and as a result her body is reacting to that treatment. And so that set the tone for all of the books. And there's a line in that where Professor Montgomery says, if women don't see women, if we don't see each other, then how can we expect anybody else to? And I wanted that to kind of begin, because that's the direction all the stories head in.
Because that is what the main tenets, isn't it? Not mend yourself, but that you do have the power to
take control.
Reclaim it.
Yeah,
take
yeah.
control.
I didn't want them to be angry stories. I think they're not about they're not a celebration of women at the expense of men. That was very important to me as well. It's not saying, they're not about blaming people, because, sorry, to explain, the stories about women at a kind of transitional, pivotal moment in their life where they are assessing where they are, they recognise something isn't right, and they decide, I need to make a change. So they're finding that inner roar, they're finding that strength to take control of their life and make a change. For me, well, all of these characters got into that situation by themselves, and they're going to take control and get themselves out of it. So it wasn't about blame. It's not, you put me here, it's your fault. It's really about taking control and saying, I can make a difference in my life. So they're positive, uplifting, and real. Even though they're surreal, I think they're real issues that we all face.
So there's a story about I can't remember the exact title of the story, The Woman on the Shelf.
Yes, the woman who's kept on the shelf.
Yeah, it's like she did climb up there.
That's exactly
in
it.
the first place.
Yeah.
And ultimately has the power to climb back down again.
Yeah.
But they're all about, the stories are all really about moments of shifting identity.
Yeah.
Aren't they? When you're something that has maybe been okay, like sitting on the shelf.
Yeah. So
stops
that's
being for some reason.
Exactly. So that story in particular, The Woman Who Was Kept on the Shelf, is about a woman who falls in love with this guy, and he's so amazing at DIY, she realises one day that he's actually building a shelf for her to sit on. So she sits on the shelf along with his golf trophies and his football trophies, and she becomes his trophy wife, and she sits beneath the big brown trout that he also caught. And she loves it. She climbs up there feeling adored. He puts her up there to praise her. He brings his family and friends in to place her up there. It's, look at this wonderful woman, I adore her. But what happens when you're sitting on the shelf and life continues on without you, and you lose your identity, and she starts to gather dust? And that she does say to herself in that story, I climbed up here. He may have built the shelf, but I got up here, and it's my job to get back down again. I'm not going to give away all the stories.
No.
But to give you a taste of about taking control themselves, the characters.
And where did the title come from? Is it such an affecting title?
That particular Roar.
No, Roar.
It came from, well, the original title was The Woman Who, because every story begins with the woman who blah 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 blah. But when I wrote The Woman Who Slowly Disappeared, I began that story with I Am Woman, Hear Me Roar, which is the Helen Reddy song. And then when we were discussing a new title, Roar was taken from that quote. And first of all, we thought about the woman who roared, and I didn't want people to think these are about women who are yelling, getting up and screaming and shouting, but I was comfortable with roar because they're about the inner roar, those kind of moments that you have, that I have quite regularly. There's kind of frustration inside, where you need to vocalise it, you need to assert yourself, and I was very comfortable then with roar representing my roar, so these stories in a way were my silent roar.
One of the things that really struck me is all the women are nameless.
Yes.
So tell us about that.
I just felt that, well, what I did with these collections just break all the rules, I think, and I really had fun not following. And I always feel like I break the rules with my novels, but I definitely did with this. I don't think they needed names, and it wasn't important to me what do they look like, and what are their names, but the most important thing was their story and how they were feeling, what they were going through. And because of the title, The Woman Who, they just were the woman. They're every woman. They're all of us. And I really liked that. Made it more special, I think.
Yeah, and more identifiable
Yeah.
as well, because I guess if you call a character, I don't know, you give a character a name, you immediately put something on it.
True, yeah.
You know, so you're not good, it's not going to make you feel like you don't relate to that person because they're Henrietta, for want of, I just picked a name, I have nothing against Henriettas.
Sorry, all Henriettas.
Tried to pick a name, but there hope that there's no Henriettas out there. So you sold the TV rights, haven't you? Again, you hateful creature.
It's very exciting. So I'm working with Nicole Kidman's Blossom Films and Made Up Stories.
I properly hate you.
Thanks, I'll take that as a compliment.
Always.
And they work together on Big Little Lies over the past few years, and I'm working with them on this, which is incredible. And the showrunners and the writers are Liz Flahive and Carly Mensch, who were the creators of Glow on Netflix and Orange is the New Black. So there's this incredible team.
You're on your own, love. I'm saying off now.
I'm delighted, because I think particularly with Made Up Stories, their whole focus is on making stories written by women for women, celebrating women, or stories from women's perspectives, which is quite a rare. It is quite a rare thing, and they're seen as niche stories, and no longer. I think now is certainly the time for women's stories are becoming more popular, thankfully. Yeah. So I'm with a really good team who I know will tell the stories in the right way.
And TV has become really credible now as well.
Yeah.
Where it used to be TV was a poor relation because you couldn't get a movie deal. And
yeah.
Now it's,
Oh, it's amazing. I mean, Glow and Big Little Lies are two of my favourite shows in the last few years. So to be working with people who created those shows and wrote those shows is just an absolute dream. They're major powerhouses. So yeah, I have to pinch myself in that one.
And not to go kind of rushing off down that angle, but have you got any idea how they're going to approach it?
Well, that's what we're working on now. It will be a different actors in each episode, which is the exciting thing, because hopefully it will attract a lot of amazing talent. So we can have different directors, different writers writing each episode. But we do obviously have to find a structure. I can't really give much away, but find a structure in how to tell each story, because they're also very different. But what I love is that they really embrace the surreal part of it. Sometimes that can scare people off. We love what the stories are about, but we don't like how you're telling them. But it was the opposite. They really love the whole visual aspect, the very quirky, whimsical take on it. So that will be an important part of the show.
So, which was the story you used? Was the very first story the woman who slowly disappeared?
Yeah.
And so, when you put the book together, did you have an idea of how you wanted the stories to flow, or?
Yes, actually that was an interesting one. I think in the end I had over 30 stories written. I probably had 40 ideas, and maybe 34, 35, 36, I'm looking at in my editor, written. And it was about, I suppose some were a repetition on the same theme, others were, the characters were too similar, or the settings were too similar, so we were kind of just moving things around and seeing what fit, not putting something back to back that was too similar story-wise. Or this is in a hotel and this one's also in a hotel, or this one's set in a restaurant, we need to separate them. So that was really interesting, but I was very sure that I wanted The Woman Who Slowly Disappeared to begin the collection, because that was the first one I wrote, and I think it was a good starter. But I definitely took the guidance of my wonderful editor, Lynn Drew, on that one. Because
did you want to end? Presumably, you wanted to end on The Woman Who Roared.
Exactly.
For the same reason.
Yeah, which was the last story I wrote, I think. Yeah, it was the last story I wrote, and that only came about after we had the title Roar. I thought, well, then I wanted to add in a story about the woman who roared.
Story.
Yeah.
That was actually a question we asked prior to this event. We asked Facebook and Twitter for some questions, and that one of the questions was actually, had you always set out to write 30 stories, or have you left some out? And if you've left some out, what are you going to do with them?
Well, I kept some back because I wanted to be able to provide some exclusive stories to, for my very special super fans who are here today. So extra content. There was one that I really wanted in, but Lynn thought was too rude.
Oh God. She's so boring.
It had a very rude title, and I didn't want to change the
Can you
title.
give us a clue?
Well, so I can. Can I say a bad word?
Yes.
So it was the woman who threw shit at the fan. Which was one
That's
of my
not bad,
favourite stories, but I think
so much
Lynn's
worse.
probably like, it's not just the title, the story was crap. But which was a woman who walks into a room and literally and gathers all the people who have bothered her over the years that she hasn't, she has an axe to grind, and she literally throws poop at the fan and it goes everywhere on everyone. So it was probably in bad taste, but I had so much fun writing it. So it will appear somewhere sometime.
Did you manage to get some things out of your system writing these stories by the sound of it?
Definitely, I did, and that's why I think I became addicted to writing the stories. I was the woman who couldn't stop writing the woman who stories. They were, and that's also because that's why I really like the short story as well. Whenever I came up with an idea and got that brilliant adrenaline rush of coming up with something that I felt was refreshing and new and original, and I immediately wanted to put pen to paper, an hour and the story was done, and I just felt kind of revitalized after writing them. It also helped me figure some things out or process something in it, process the issue myself, made me understand something in a different way, or perhaps, I'm trying to think of an example, but particularly the woman who found bite marks on her skin. That was a very personal one.
So let's talk about that one a bit, because I actually did have a question about that. At what point in motherhood were you writing that story? Maybe it's a story about guilt and a woman who's returning from maternity leave to work.
So I remember the day I wrote that story. So I left my baby at home to go to work. So I say baby, but he must have been one, and it was very shortly after. Oh no, he wasn't even 1 year. Sorry, he was between 6 and 9 months, and it was the next story I wrote after the woman who slowly disappeared. So I left him at home, and he was crying. I brought my daughter to.
How was he crying?
That thing where it's like, don't ever let go. And then I brought my daughter to Montessori, and then she was also. And so then I got into the car and I just went, and then I went to work and I spent my day writing the book, and after my usual working day I wrote that story for myself, and so obviously I'm not the character and it's not my personal situation, but I was absolutely able to put in everything that I'd experienced even that day and the day before and the day before that, and at the end of that story I have, now go home Cecelia. So I obviously just gave myself a little kind of pep talk. So that definitely meant something. That was very powerful, that story to me.
They all in a way boil down to loss of identity, or things that I think every woman is going to identify with. Like the woman who I'm not going to be able to remember the exact title.
I'll help
The
you.
woman who was swallowed up by the floor. That kind of moment when you're in a difficult situation and something's gone wrong and cringing, or much more seriously the aging thing, the woman who slowly disappeared, or they do go from being. The woman who forgot her name.
Some of them are light-hearted, so the woman who was swallowed up by the floor, and met other women down there too. Met lots of women down there too. It's a fun one, but it's true. It's about a woman who's doing a work presentation, and she's very nervous about it, and she makes a mistake and she embarrasses herself, and that moment where you just want the ground to open up and swallow you. Well, that happens. There's a nice inviting big black hole, and down she leaps, and she looks around.
You don't need to tell them anything else.
No, I won't. But do you know what the title gives? The thing is, she meets lots of other women down there too, so I don't need to give anything away. They're kind of self-explanatory, but hopefully the reading of them will be the surprising, enjoying bit. But that is universal.
Each one really is a little fable.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, they are. Yeah. Yes, is my answer. The answer you hate. Sorry. Yes, they are fables.
Yes. Do you have a favourite? I suppose we've talked about. The Woman Who Slowly Disappeared is a very important one to me because it's the first that began the collection.
I do love The Woman Who Was Kept on the Shelf. I explained that one. The one about guilt. The Woman Who Swallowed Up the Floor is just so much fun. Everybody can identify with that one. I love The Woman Who Unraveled.
Yes.
I'll tell The Woman Who Spoke Woman. I would say that's definitely a favourite. For the last 5 years, I didn't know exactly, if there would be a place in publishing for this collection. I write a novel a year, and that's my usual, my usual thing, shtick. But I do work in television, and I had been trying to get these made as a TV series. And I was sharing the stories with my female friends who were it was starting so much dialogue, and they were so excited about the stories, and then they were sharing stories about their lives with me, and more than anything else I've ever written, I felt, this is exciting, I'm feeling excitement. And then I'd go into the room to pitch, and nothing against men, but I think if you don't have that personal experience, then it's very hard to connect to something and therefore choose it. So I went home to my husband and I said, I need to speak to someone who speaks woman. And then I wrote that story about kind of a cabinet, a government that's made up entirely of men, and a woman comes in to speak to them about women's issues, and they don't understand her dialect because she speaks woman and not man. So that kind of came from trying to share these stories with.
But then also their approach is that they need a woman who can translate.
Yes.
So a woman who mainly speaks man but can speak woman if they have to.
Yeah.
But they only need one, and that's a real thing, isn't it? We've got one.
Yeah.
We don't need
the one woman
can
represent all women, but not men, because how can a woman know about men's issues? But the point is, how can men know about women's issues? We do often speak different languages, but it doesn't mean that we can't communicate. That's my philosophy.
A little bit more political than people would expect, with a little p, not a big shouty p, but they're a little bit more political.
Yeah, because there's stories, I suppose there's play on gender politics, there's the story, or gender identity. The Woman Who Wore Pink is kind of set in a world where women have to wear pink wristbands and men wear blue wristbands. A woman cannot hold the door for a man. A woman, cannot pour her own bottle of wine at the table. And that comes from everyday issues that just annoy me. If I'm going to pour my drink and someone's like, no, it's actually spilling it everywhere, and it's actually taking longer for them to
ask for a bill, but the bill will still be brought
to the man. And also that moment that if I hold the door open for a man, and this is just as men being polite, by the way, so I'm not saying men are horrible beings, it's just situations that I don't think that they understand. So if I'm holding a door for a man and they won't go through, they're like, no, I'll hold it for you. But it actually, the hassle and time it takes for them to take it from you, and the bags in their hands, and really all they have to do is walk through. Just would have made life so much easier for everyone. So those kind of little issues made their way into that story.
Do you, how do I put this? Do you feel like enough women's stories are being told?
Well, there can always be more. I would like women's stories to be taken more seriously. I mean, there are a lot of women's stories being told, but I think sometimes I use that niche word, or that they're less important than other stories. But they're not. This world is only made of men and women. There's only two of us in it. So both our stories are equally important. And stories about your emotions and everyday life, and what makes, about life's journey, is very important. That's what we're here on the earth to do. So it's not necessarily, I wish they would be taken, not more seriously, but as seriously as all of those other novels written by men.
And one of your stories that I loved, I loved loads of them, honestly, The Woman Who Was Pigeonholed.
Oh, yes.
And I really love that. I can really visualise it.
Yeah.
Where did that come from?
That came from feeling pigeonholed. I think women get so many labels, and a lot of it did have to do with being a writer and the different labels that female writer. First of all, I mean, if a man writes, he's just an author, but suddenly I'm a female author. I'm a women's writer.
Yeah.
So in the last 15 years, I think I've experienced a lot of that, and a lot of labels like chick-lit labels, romantic fiction labels, and not just that, but also in life. You're a wife, you're a wag, all these horrible titles that we get really irritate me. Headlines irritate me because they never represent what the story is. And so therefore the headline that you give a person never represents the content of a person. I'm just very irritated. It's a collection of things that irritate me. No, not really. But that story it's just that you are one type of person, and you can never, and once you're seen as one type of person, you can never move out of that box.
It's like the point you were making earlier, really, that the only people who will really be surprised that you can write like this, or will have chosen to write like this, are people who've never read you.
Yeah.
And would have put you in a box.
Yeah.
Over there. It's okay to talk about another author while I'm interviewing you.
That's fine. Just don't buy her book.
But no, don't buy her book. Although last night I was saying buy her book, but tonight I'm saying
you're so fickle.
It's whoever's paying the bill this love, sorry. So last night I was interviewing Jodie Picoult, and she was telling me, do buy her book, it's great, but buy this one first. She was telling me that she had won a romance fiction award for a book that had no romance in it.
Yeah, I would well believe
like
that.
Not a single, not a love interest, not a sex scene.
It's funny, that happens a lot, and particularly travelling around the world. I'm not going to name and shame the countries, but
go on.
No, I can't. People are watching, aren't they?
Yes, and they could be anywhere.
Yeah.
Yes.
But I think what happens is something is a success, and then the desire is to obviously replicate that. So cover-wise, P.S. I Love You, particularly with the movie cover, were a couple embracing, and I went back to that country, and every cover had the exact same, not the same couple, but a different couple embracing. And I remember for the Marble Collector, which is not a romantic story at all, it's about a father, a daughter, and marbles, and it was a couple embracing. And
with a marble.
Not even a marble. If there was a marble, I could understand maybe they're trying to link it in somewhere. But and that is what happens. They become, I don't know, they just become pigeonholed. Yeah, and I'm so proud of writing romance stories. Lyrebird was a romantic novel. I was delighted about that. But not all of them are. Some of them are mysterious, and some of them flawed. And what was my one? Perfect had kind of a thriller element. But all of them are love stories, but not always romantic love stories.
How many have you written now? How many books?
15. Well, I've just 15 published.
15
working
published.
on my 16th. Is that right?
Loads.
The bosses say that's right.
And what did you find different about writing a novel versus writing a short story? I know that sounds like a really stupid question.
No, it's not a stupid question, because it is different. I feel like the stories where they're a snapshot of a moment in the character's life. It's like a passing thought. A novel obviously is a longer affair where you're going into the background of the character. The story is like spreading its growing roots, it's sprouting out, and you want other characters to develop, and you have other plots and other little stories going on. The short story was really just like I stick on that one moment in their life, and they were such I've kind of answered that 5 times over in a different way. But it's just, and I felt like they're punchier, and that I really was just getting something off of my mind very quickly and moving on to the next, and without having to go back in time. It was really just about that one moment.
Would you like to write more short stories?
I love writing short stories, but the thing with me is that I can't plan anything. I really have to go with whatever idea comes into my mind. I am controlled by the voices in my head. Whatever idea takes over, and I get really excited about it, it starts to grow and grow, and then I feel compelled to write. So I couldn't sit here and go, yes, I'm going to write 10 more stories, but then the ideas might never be there. But I enjoyed them so much. I hope that I could continue to write short stories.
So are you one of those annoying writers who says, oh, the characters just take over and they do their thing, and I'm just the vehicle?
Yeah, I am. And I know that sounds really weird and it is annoying, but with some novels I have felt that I literally am just holding the pen. I don't know where this stuff is coming from, it's just coming out. Of course not every day is like that. You know, other days are harder and you really have to push the story. And sometimes you have to write what's wrong to get to what's right. But mostly, it really is the only thing I feel that I'm good at. So I hold that pen and all this stuff comes flowing out. And yeah, and then someone over here helps me find structure.
Pen?
Yeah,
Not
right,
really.
longhand. Yeah.
Really?
Yes. I do also have a computer.
And then type it up?
Yeah, so I write a chapter or two if it's going well. I might flow into the next chapter, but then I transcribe and I edit as I go along, so I immediately have my second draft. I love the feel of writing, and it feels more creative to me, and it feels like the ideas flow a lot better. I also think I'm a very visual writer, so when I've got the pen on the page, I can see the scene that I'm writing. So I write first that way, and then when I'm typing, it just feels more like I'm using my brain, and it's more mechanical, and
that makes
to
sense.
think more.
Makes sense. So that's kind of, oh yeah, well, it wouldn't matter whether it made sense to me anyway or not.
I'm
That
glad.
is- I just think so many, I don't know, I don't think I could even write whole chapter anymore. I can barely write a post-it note. I don't know whether everybody else feels like, because you spend so much time on computers and phones, or I do.
No, and most people, it is rare. I mean, most people don't write anymore. But I do. I have this attractive writer's bump on my finger. That's, isn't that nice?
Move the camera into the writing
Zoom
button.
in, the writer's bump.
Yes, you do, yeah.
And it just, it's the only way I can do it, really. I think it takes me back
It's
to
a sign
when I
you've
was...
suffered for your art.
That's it, yeah. I have other signs. There's plenty of them. But do you know what I think it might bring me back to when I was younger, writing diaries? So I used to write a diary every day before I went to bed. And it wasn't necessarily today I played tennis. It was like, how did I feel? And all very deep and meaningful. But that always helped me, even as from the age of 12 all the way through my teens. And I think I get that same kind of release now as I did then.
Do you look back at those now?
I have them under lock and key. I have picked up a few once in a while. I analysed everything. I thought a lot about everything and wanted to understand how I felt about everything, which is probably really, I didn't necessarily share that with people, but for myself I was always trying to work things out.
What would you hope that the readers will take from Raw?
Firstly, to me, when I read and when I write, escapism is so important. There's nothing more wonderful than being swept away from your life for a moment, to forget whatever is going on in your own life and move somewhere else. And so that's number one: entertainment and escapism. I think because of the nature of these books, the themes that I'm writing about, if I can make people think about something in a different way, then that's great. If I can make people feel that they're not alone, we're all losing it together, then that's amazing. And I always want to move people. I want people to feel something when they're reading the stories. They're the books that I remember the most. If something makes me cry or something even irritates me, they're the books that I'll remember the most. So to be moved, to be entertained, and to be moved, and to make you think. That's 3 things.
That's loads. Do you? We were talking a little bit earlier about the fact that these stories are being published into the kind of the big Me Too moment. How do you feel about that?
I feel that, so I don't know if I've already said this to you, but when I went over to LA to discuss something, January of last year, I was talking about other stories, and they said to me, what are you most passionate about now? And I started talking about this collection. And all of a sudden there was definitely a change in the room. They sat up, there was tears, there was laughter, and that was the week that Trump had been inaugurated. I was sitting with them I was having these meetings on a Thursday, and the women's marches were due to take place on a Saturday. And I think it was a time of, there was a lot of fear, people were very raw, there was a lot of anger, but also people wanted to take action and start listening to women and telling women's stories. And I think that timing was very important to getting these, to these books, to these stories arriving at this moment now. We announced them in Frankfurt kind of this time last year, about 2 or 3 days before the Harvey Weinstein story broke. And while these are not about sexual abuse or sexual assault or gender pay gaps, did I say that right, gender pay gap?
Yes. Yeah.
I do see how they're linked, or how they're kind of on this, they're giving each other, they're giving them a platform, because they're about listening to women, hearing women's stories, and wanting to know about life from the perspective of a woman.
Yeah, and about those kind of everyday feelings of whether it's guilt or, it's probably my age, but that the invisibility one really struck a chord with me, because you don't know whether you're doing it to yourself or not, whether you start to feel like I'm getting to that age, so maybe, you're almost putting it on yourself, but you certainly start to feel invisible. Those kind of little things that are just the bedrock of most women's lives.
Absolutely, and I don't think people really talk about it much, and you might with your friends, but we don't hear of it so much. Or your magazine, I'm sure it does, talks about all of those important things, but it's certainly not, they're not conversations that I would have regularly with people, but only through writing them and then talking about them I realise we're all the same, we all have the same, we're all made of the same stuff, and hopefully that will make people feel less alone. I think it's good to hear.
Do you think you could have written these stories when you were younger? I mean, I know you started a few years ago, but...
No, I think I wrote them when the time was right for me, and then when I started writing them I couldn't stop, so there was obviously kind of something there, that needed to just, the reservoir just went and they all came. Yeah, absolutely. It's probably, and within this collection there is a collection of its own, which is the flustered mother as well of young kids, and I think I couldn't have written them without having children. I couldn't have possibly understood what those days are like. So I think having children and then that adding to an already busy life certainly gave me more to think about and to live with and to deal with. It gave me a lot more experience.
One of the questions that came from Facebook, which I did give you a heads up on, so I hope you've thought about it.
Oh God.
Is if you could give raw to any man in the world to read, who would you choose? Let's assume that they can all read.
They can, if they read it in the male dialect.
We could get it translated first.
I'm going to have, this is going to be a really vague answer. I think any man that reads it needs to be open-minded, I think, and feel not defensive that these stories are an attack on men. They're not. They're simply an insight into a woman's mind. Maybe sometimes if you're wondering why your wife or your partner or whatever goes quiet for a moment, maybe there's some other stuff going on that you just might not know about, they might not talk about. So anyone, and I'm not trying to brush it off, but I think anyone who's kind of open to learning about the little tick-tocking that goes on in there in a woman's mind, but that sometimes just doesn't get spoken about, would be the perfect man to read this.
It's like that constant little nagging voice that we assume that they don't have. Maybe they do.
Yeah, I'm sure, and I'm sure there's many stories that men could relate to in this. We are very similar, but I could only write it from my perspective. Though I do have the story of the woman who walked in her husband's shoes, because I wanted to have, it's about a wife who literally feels compelled to put her husband's shoes on, and when she does, she walks through life feeling how he feels and be treated how others treat him. And we all have it. There's no easy day for everybody. So I think they're empathetic towards both sexes. Hopefully,
yes. I'm going to slightly go off piste. Since you have the opportunity, you're in the room. Sorry, Facebook. Since these guys are in the room with Cecelia, and this is probably not an opportunity you're going to get again. Has anybody got anything they'd like to ask Cecelia? You are not going to get this opportunity again, guys.
Well, you will when the camera goes off. You can ask me anything.
Yeah, that's true. No, Nobody got anything they want to ask her? I've got loads more. It's fine.
That's fine, and I'll just take a few sips.
I have one.
Oh, now the
Go on.
Do you actually have a favourite book that's not your own?
I'm just going to tell the camera. The question was, do you have a favourite book that's not your own?
Well, loads of books. But I do love The Time Traveller's Wife by Audrey Niffenegger. That's one of my favourite books. It's just such... I love it because it's so clever. It's such a clever premise. It's beautifully written, it's dark, and it's romantic. And I think they kind of make up all my favourite things. It has I know it's fiction, but it's also science fiction-y. Yeah, and it's just so smart. It's kind of like The Sixth Sense. You know when you watch that movie and then you want to go back and watch it again knowing what you know? It has that so cleverly written that you want to go back and read it knowing what you know at the end.
And there was another one, wasn't it? You, yeah.
What made you do 30 rather than like 10 more detailed, something like that?
I had written so many. I had so many ideas, and I think probably had 34, and 30 seemed 30 women, 30 stories. It was quite catchy. And they're probably 30 of the strongest stories as well. But I think HarperCollins are to thank for that. 30 women, 30 stories. I didn't come up with that on my own. I just wrote them.
And lastly, I'm going to ask you, can you tell us a little bit about your next book?
Oh!
Just a little bit, just a little sneak preview.
I actually can't.
Of course you can.
No, I cannot.
You can, because I know you're waiting for the edits, because you
Yeah,
just told
I
me.
am. So, yeah, this is my 60. It's a novel. It is not a collection of short stories. The brief to myself, because I had spent so long, writing short stories. Well, not so long. They were over time, but last year I wrote 10 of them, the ones that I had ideas for that I hadn't written down. The brief to myself was, this is not the 31st story of Roar. Now move in like I always do with every novel, move in a different direction, a new tone, a whole new feel. And so that's all I'll give you. I tried to use as many words there to make it sound like I'd answered you.
You haven't answered me, that's a rubbish answer.
It will be out next year, and it has words on pages. But I'm very excited about it. It's great. It's really good. I'm sorry.
Well, I was going to say thank you for being wonderful, Cecelia Ahern, but you haven't been.
Thank you. Well, I would. If they weren't in the room, I would.
Were you getting the death stare? They're sitting over there stopping her answer that question. We could usher you from the room.
Yes, it's about Roar.
This is all about Roar. But everybody always wants to know what's coming next, so they can get excited.
I know. I'm very excited, but I'm not allowed to blab.
So what would you like the Facebook audience to take away from this about Roar, other than buy it, obviously?
Yeah, other than buy it, I hope you enjoy it. I hope it's surprising, it's unusual, hopefully it's unique and original, and I just hope you have as much fun reading it and are as moved reading it as I was writing it. That would be the ultimate. And if you haven't read me, then this is the perfect one to read, to put me in a whole new pigeonhole. You can say, oh, she's that mad, quirky writer. And then the next one comes out and it won't be mad and quirky, and then you'll be really confused. I just hope that, I hope you were moved by it and that it, that's a really bad pitch.
No, it's really good, thank you.
Oh, thank you, and thank you all for watching, wherever you are, in your office, at home, on the toilet. Hope you've enjoyed it.